Assembly, I wish to thank His Excellency the Prime Minister of Lao People's Democratic Republic. And I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Kingdom of Belgium to introduce an address by the head of government.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the honor to introduce the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Belgium, Her Excellency Madame Sophie Wilmès.
Monsieur le Président,
President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, Heads of State and Government, Heads of Delegation, ladies and gentlemen, trust, responsibility, commitment. These are the three pillars upon which we lay mutual assistance and cooperation between our countries, in short, upon which we lay effective multilateralism. These are the three values we require today to safeguard this multilateralism, values I wish to discuss with you today. 2020 will be forever etched in our memories as a painful year. The COVID-19 pandemic took us by surprise. Each of our states was faced with an unprecedented crisis. This virus claimed the lives and continues to claim the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. It has ripped apart families across the world. Moreover, its economic impact is gargantuan, but it has also sparked uncertainty and questions about the future. However, COVID-19 must not blind us. On the contrary, we must open our eyes to the weaknesses that this pandemic has laid bare, to our societal models, for example. We must acknowledge the negative and disproportionate impact that the pandemic has on people that suffer heavily already from inequality. Women, girls, children, older persons and persons with a disability. Nobody must be left behind. Ladies and gentlemen, at a time when we continue to combat this pandemic with strength and steely determination, as well as its consequences, we cannot nevertheless turn our back to the other major challenges facing us in the 21st century. Geopolitical tensions are palpable and conflicts raise or threaten to emerge across the globe. These tensions are simply exacerbated by the current health situation, and they jeopardize the delicate balances reached in our world. Conflicts are never inevitable. Nevertheless, they have a devastating impact on our populations. The situation in the Gulf, for example, remains a source of grave concern, and it requires us to move forward with great caution. The JCPOA remains crucial to guarantee the exclusively peaceful nature of the Iranian nuclear program. We must actively seek to preserve this agreement as well as the non-proliferation regime. The fact the embargo on conventional weapons is set to soon be lifted must not jeopardize the nuclear agreement and its achievements. That is an absolute priority for the region and its stability, for international security, and for the global non-proliferation architecture. In the Middle East, a lasting and sustainable peace must still be met. There can be no solution to the conflict in the Middle East without a lasting and just solution to the Palestinian question. There can be no peace in the Middle East without Israel enjoying the legitimate right to live in peace and security in internationally recognized borders. There can be no peace in the Middle East if we do not eradicate terrorism. Yes, the suspension of plans aiming to lend official status to the annexation of certain parts of occupied Palestinian territories is a step in the right direction. But no, it is not enough. These plans must be abandoned once and for all. Annexation would gravely jeopardize the viability of a lasting solution and would close the door on future negotiations. We commend recent announcement made regarding the normalization of relations between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain. We must see this as a sign of hope that such agreements can stand as a cornerstone for peace and stability across the region. That said, international and multilateral efforts aiming to lead to the resumption of negotiations must be actively supported to allow a negotiated and viable two-state solution based on international law and the pertinent resolutions of the United Nations. The security situation in vast swathes of the Sahel remains of grave concern, despite extensive efforts and increased international support. Following a coup staged by insubordinate members of the Malian armed forces, the legal and constitutional order in Mali has been destabilized. The legitimate demands, aspirations and frustrations of the Malian citizens who are awaiting solutions to the challenges faced by the country must not be answered in this way. We extend our full support to all regional and inter-Malian efforts underway, designed to quickly usher in a civilian transition process in Bamako, which will make it possible to restore constitutional order. Many of Mali's challenges are common to the region as a whole. Terrorism, conflicts between herders and farmers, and intercommunitarian tensions spark a risk of acute security concerns. A holistic approach is vital to combat violent extremism. Such an approach must emphasize good governance, the fight against impunity, the strengthening of democratic institutions, tackling the grievances of marginalized groups, as well as sustainable and inclusive development. At the same time, increasing numbers of regions in the world are weathering the health, security and humanitarian consequences of climate change and worsening biodiversity. Drought and these abnormal meteorological conditions are driving people from their homes, whether this be in Somalia, Yemen or Afghanistan. The melting of the ice caps is leading to the militarization of the Arctic region. The impact of climate change exacerbates the social, political, economic and environmental causes of conflicts. The climate emergency is a challenge for peace. There is no more time to waste, and this is a cause behind which each and every one of us must rally. The Sustainable Development Goals and more generally Agenda 2030 are crucial tools to meet global challenges that we all face, whether these be poverty, inequalities, climate change, climate degradation, or environmental degradation writ large. Ladies and gentlemen, in the face of these global challenges, we must take action. We must admit that we cannot act alone. None of these common challenges can be tackled in isolation. None of these complex problems have simple solutions. We have no other choice but to pool our strength and to rethink what we have come to accept as irrefutable truths. We must even change our paradigms, but we must always do all of the above in full respect of the principles of the Charter. Multilateralism does not function inherently. It functions because there is a common desire to make it function. If that means that the task of those that take action is if that means that it's more difficult for those that take action to take action and it's easier for those that simply sit and think to think, then that's as may be, but let us never choose the wrong struggle. Multilateralism is always more relevant precisely when it's called into question. Now more than ever before, we need effective multilateralism, never as a goal in itself. Multilateralism must be used as a means to tackle the problems that we all face. It must be used as a measure to tackle crisis head on. We need to use trust, responsibility and commitment. Trust. Now, when I say trust, I'm talking about trust in ourselves, the trust in our ability, collectively and individually, to tackle the crisis as embodied by our healthcare services. I'm talking about trust in our courage, in our resilience, our knowledge and our responsible behaviour together with scientific progress to slow climate change. I'm talking about trust in our desire to achieve sustainable development for all. The international community has already overcome sizable challenges and we will do it again. Resignation is not an option. When I talk about trust, I'm talking about mutual trust. Mutual trust means that we must all live up to our words. We must all engage in constant dialogue and put ourselves in other people's shoes. When we don't do this, distrust takes root and sooner or later necessary cooperation becomes difficult, if not impossible. When I talk about trust, I'm also talking about good governance at a national, regional and international level to win the trust of citizens, be they male or female. Good governance must be built on the foundations of the rule of law, democracy, accountability, responsibility and full respect for human rights. When I talk about trust, I mean trust in justice, a justice which must be built on the unshakable conviction that all individuals are equal and that no form of discrimination can change that inalterable facts. Ladies and gentlemen, trust, responsibility, commitment. As the United Nations, we have a responsibility to make global governance work. We work in different ways and contribute in different ways and at different levels, but everyone can benefit from doing their part. The United Nations is us. We share a responsibility to ensure multilateralism works and to demonstrate its added value. It is for this reason that we fully support the sustained efforts of Secretary-General Antonio Guterres to reform the United Nations. Such reforms should make the organisation more effective, more transparent, more proactive and more adaptable. We also fully support the Action for Peacekeeping Plan. This initiative acknowledges the need to safeguard one of the most important instruments of the international community, peacekeeping, to support political processes, to protect hundreds of thousands of civilians and to contribute to upholding a ceasefire. Ensuring that global governance and multilateralism function involves also not hindering the work of existing organs. It is on the basis of this conviction that Belgium reaffirms its support to the ICC, a body crucial in the fight against impunity, which cloaks the most serious crimes affecting the whole of the international community. As an independent and impartial institution, the court plays a vital role in this field. Responsibility also means taking ownership of challenges. It means moving from simply identifying challenges to working to tackle them. We have this responsibility to our fellow citizens, but we also have that responsibility to our children and future generations. This brings me to talk to you about commitment. For my country, the commitment to multilateralism is part of its DNA. That is perhaps as a result of our history and our tradition of compromise. International rules protect us. Cooperation and working closely together has made us stronger. Effective multilateralism means that the influence of our individual countries becomes irrelevant. If we adopt a multilateral approach, we all, as small or large countries, have a voice and we bring added value to the table. This commitment is what prompted Belgium to win its 6th term on the UN Security Council. As an elected member for 2019-2020, we have and will continue to honour our duty to make progress on the cause of peace and security. However, we note that the Security Council is not devoid of geopolitical tensions. It's an imperfect body. And we see in the Security Council 15 states that are not always able to resolve all conflicts. However, a lot of unanimous decisions are also made. There is inspiring increased cooperation between members. There are measures taken to tackle new security threats, such as climate change, and these are encouraging. I would say at this juncture that transitional justice is another area in which the United Nations can be more ambitious. There must be a human rights-based approach with justice and accountability at its heart. All of the above are ambitions which a lot of international actors hold, and Belgium will be committed on these fronts. Commitment is the driving force of cooperation and humanitarian assistance as afforded by my country. This commitment is what has prompted Belgium to provide multi-year support to UNRWA. And our country is in fact one of the major donors to this organisation in such a way as to improve the lives of Palestinian refugees. We're also a major donor to Yemen. We also support the efforts of UNICEF to monitor child rights in conflicts. Belgium has also provided predictable multi-year financing to UN development activities and continues to do so, and that makes it possible to take long-term action and to respond appropriately to many crises. We are committed also to UN Women, and this year we're marking the 10th anniversary of the organisation. My country has worked to mainstream gender equality into all of its endeavours. This indeed is a guiding light of our foreign policy, and it is bolstered by our conviction that gender equality is absolutely right, that we firmly support the work of Dr. Denis Mukwege against as he combats sexual violence in the east of Congo. Commitment is indeed a defining feature of our armed forces. whether they're fighting in the global coalition against Daesh or whether they're helping multilateral operations in Mali or Afghanistan under the aegis of the United Nations, the EU or NATO. We need the United Nations to be a strong organisations, and such strong organisations must be able to draw upon resources that sovereign states earmark for them. Belgium will work tirelessly alongside the United Nations to mobilise resources necessary for its action, because such resources are a crucial component of multilateralism. As we mark the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, we cannot succumb to pessimism. Ladies and gentlemen, let's roll up our sleeves and let us draw inspiration from previous achievements. In the coming weeks, we will mark the 20th anniversary of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda and the Beijing Platform. These are all successes notched up by multilateralism and have led to the establishment of a global political framework for women's rights. These are just some examples of what we can do when we work together on a daily basis. We're helping the situation of half the global population. That counts, but nevertheless, there is still a lot to be done. I would recall that multilateralism can work. And above, I've outlined many examples of effective multilateralism. So let us support it unequivocally with trust, responsibility and commitment. Thank you.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the Prime Minister of Belgium for the statement just made. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Ireland to introduce